Welcome to another episode of the Two Shots Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and today we're going to be joined by our good friend here, the one and only Noah Magato-George, joining us from Pounding the Rock. Noah, how's it going, man?
I'm good, Joe. I actually just switched over to Air Alamo, so I'm kind of figuring things out over there.
Okay.
But aside from that, just adjusting to life as, the site expert editor-in-chief for a site instead of being like an assistant editor and contributor. It's a different role. I'm adjusting to it, but you know what? The Spurs are also adjusting to something that they've never experienced in a long time. So if they can do it, I can do it.
So Noah became a free agent, I guess, and he got picked up by Air Alamo. You were being courted. So congratulations either way, man. Happy for you. So
thanks, Joe.
We're going to go ahead and talk about Spurs news that broke, right ahead of the trade deadline. And the Spurs were busy all the way up until the last day, making deals before the clock struck. What was it, 2:30 or 3 o'clock Central Time, the deadline?
Yeah, it's 2 p.m. Central Time. It's like a few minutes before they got that last trade snuck in there. So, yeah, they were doing some deals.
Yeah, so it all started with one Jakob Poeltl, and Spurs fans were kind of already giving Jakob his roses, when the Spurs were playing the Raptors, and they're like, if in fact this is Jakob's last game, he played a good game. He did play a good game, but Coach Bob told him, no need to get on the bus, young one. we just traded you. You get to stay behind here in Toronto. So the details on that kind of, shook Spurs Twitter and Spurs fans by storm. It was something that they knew was likely to happen, but they didn't think it would actually happen. But some of us that have already known what the Spurs are kind of doing as far as the season goes, and looking at all the scenarios, it was a good move for both, not just Jakob, but for the team in general as well. And I'm glad that the Spurs are finally, making sound decisions when it comes to their future. And that was going ahead and trading one Jakob Poeltl to the Toronto Raptors. And Toronto is sending the Spurs a 2024 first round pick. It's protected. We don't know the details quite yet on where that is going to go ahead and fall for the team next year. But number 1 through 6, and there it is. It is number 1 through 6 in 2024, 2025, and 2026. And the Raptors sent an unprotected 2023 and 2025 second round pick as part of the trade to acquire Poeltl from the Spurs, and that was per Hoops Hype. Again, I like the deal, because the Spurs get something, which is picks, coveted picks, and it helps solidify their future as far as, rebuilding that team to be competitive once again. What were your first impressions on the Jakob Poeltl trade?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because reportedly Jakob Poeltl wanted somewhere in the ballpark of 20 plus million, not like 25, 26 million or anything like that, but around 20 million a year. That was what he wanted in free agency. And allegedly the Spurs were only wanting to offer him 16 to 18 million. So if you can't reach that agreement and you're not going to reach it during the summer, why let him walk for nothing? So you got a first round pick. You wanted 2 first round picks. Oh, well, you got a really nice protection there. Top 6. The Raptors are not going to be that bad. You are going to get that pick. The 2023 and 2025 picks for the second round, those are, could turn into anything. And when we saw how those second round picks were moving on trade deadline day, they were able to get, teams solid rotation players. Like if the Spurs are in a position where they really want to compete in a few years and they have all these seconds, trade them. You can trade them to go get yourself a player who might fit into your rotation. So I thought it was a good trade. Khem Birch, the center who made the salary work for the Spurs, returning from the Raptors, he's not anything special. I've talked to people who cover the Raptors. He fell out of the rotation. He's 30 years old. He's probably not going to play that much, to be honest. And if he does, it's because it's exactly, he's a healthy body when he's healthy. Plus he hasn't cleared customs. He won't be with the team until after All-Star break per I believe it was Jeff McDonald of the San Antonio Express News. So, he's just a throw-in, but the rest of it, that's good for them. Like you mentioned, they're getting that draft capital, and that's exactly what a team in their position needs to do.
Yeah, they have something crazy right now. We haven't even gotten into the Josh Richardson trade, but respectively, the Spurs from now all the way up until 2029, they have 13 first-round picks in total. When you look at the whole, pick stack that they have right now, I believe it pans out to 23 picks in total from now all the way up until the 2029 season. 13 of which are going to be first round picks. The others are going to be the second round picks, which they have a plethora of in second round picks. But the interesting thing with the second round pick is that there's still some valuable players even in the second round. And if the Spurs feel like they have to have somebody, in that first round, they could package some of these picks together and kind of move up in the draft if needed, which,
Exactly.
which could become attractive to some teams where they're like, we know they look at this talent, they're like, well, we're already stacked at this position, but this is the best available player. If somebody wants to go ahead and utilize that player, they feel that it's going to fill a need and they want to go ahead and give us even more picks, then so be it. It might be a win-win scenario for the Spurs and another suitor, so that's something to keep an eye on. But either way, the Spurs are looking almost exactly like OKC at this point, Noah, which they're getting those picks, and got to go ahead and tip your hat to one Brian Wright, because a lot of people didn't like some of the moves he was making, and I think everybody's eating some crow right now because he's looking like he was playing chess while everybody else was playing checkers, So
Yeah.
kudos to you, Brian Wright. But I like this, man. There's a lot of picks this year's draft. Again, if I'm kind of looking right now at what the Spurs are doing, going ahead and trading both Josh Richardson and Jakob Poeltl, and that's showing you the direction of the team. Now we're going to go ahead and take a quick look here at what the Josh Richardson trade all involved, and it was the Pelicans. They're trading Devonte Graham, which he had a really good outing with the Spurs. We're going to get into that, and 4 second round picks to San Antonio for Josh Richardson. And again, Spurs fans wanted picks. Well, there you go. You got 4 second round picks for Josh Richardson. I would have been happy with 2. No, I'm going to be perfectly honest. But getting 4 second round picks for Josh Richardson, okay, that sweetens the deal a little bit. And I think the reason why it was 4 second round picks is because there's still quite I think 2 more years left on Devonte Graham's contract. And that's probably why they went ahead and gave the Spurs the 4 second round picks. But all in all, again, I think it was a quality trade for both teams. I mean, what were your impressions?
I thought it was a pretty good trade for both teams. I know that Devonte Graham makes it work financially. He's not really a player I'm a huge fan of. He's kind of a throw-in again, like Kim Birch, to make it work with the numbers on the salary cap. But aside from that, you can't really be upset with all the second rounders. I mean, Josh Richardson was a really solid second unit player. And again, just like we were talking about with the Raptors, if you come back in a few years and you think, hey, we're competitive, we're looking for that extra piece, and, a team that has, no real playoff chances, but a really good piece is willing to part with a really nice role player for a couple of seconds, you just got yourself 4. If 4 gets you Josh Richardson, it can probably get you a player of similar value down the line when you really need them. So yeah, not a huge fan of Graham, but it's not about Graham. It's about, the picks. It's about the second round picks, what you can do with them, whether that's chasing a player who you really want to add to your rotation or you're moving up in the draft like you talked about. So I thought it was another win for the Spurs. Plus Devontae's contract is only guaranteed, I think, for 2.2 or 2.8 million in the final year. So it's not like if they end up cutting him the final year of his contract that it's going to eat away at the salary cap. It's not.
Yeah, I think right now, currently, thanks to our good friend Paul Garcia here, the Spurs currently have, I believe, 24.9 million. They had 24.9 million in space, and they moved up after their trades to 25.5 million after the Graham Richardson trade. So they actually increased some of their cap space, which isn't bad. Their salary floor, I think they're still somewhere in the neighborhood of 12.7 or 12.9 million that they have to actually reach. If not, then they wind up paying that back to the players, So
Yeah,
not a bad thing for the players to get a little bonus, Noah. Let's be honest.
they deserve it. They've been going through a lot this season. give them that extra money. It's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt anybody. But either way, I give the Spurs an A+ on this, getting picks again to solidify their future. And currently, as I stated, with the Spurs trading both Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson, it was going to send a clear message as far as where the team is wanting to go. And that is clearly that they are wanting to go ahead and rebuild. And they know that they're already in the middle of a losing season. Probably it's going to go down as the worst season in Spurs franchise history, but that's not a bad thing because we want to go ahead and everybody, all the Spurs fans, want the Spurs to get that high pick in the upcoming draft. currently, I believe they were the second worst team after they winded up losing to both the Pistons and what was the other team that they lost to just recently too?
They
Uh,
played the Pistons, and then they just lost
the
to the
Hawks.
Bulls. The Hawks.
The
That's right.
Hawks.
They
They
played
played
the
the
Bulls
Hawks.
before the Pistons.
Yeah, because I remember watching that game because they were playing DeJounte Murray. So they lost that game to DeJounte and the Hawks. So those two games right there really put them, I believe, at the second worst record in
Yep.
the NBA. But they're still in the hunt there with the Pistons, and I believe Charlotte's right on their heels. And
Yeah, Charlotte there. Houston is there as well. So they have to
Houston.
kind of stay in that range, right?
Yeah. So right now, I would if I have to be a guessing man, I would not suggest, but I would predict that the Spurs, when it's all said and done, are going to be somewhere in that neighborhood of maybe 4 to 5. It would be, really exciting to me if they moved up and they were at least number 3. If I don't hear them at number 3, I'm gonna get really excited. No, if I don't hear them at number 5, my heart's gonna start beating real fast. I don't hear their name called at 4. I'm going to say there's still hope. Number 3 comes around and I don't hear their name. I'm going to go real crazy, especially if we're on a live stream during the NBA draft.
Yeah.
But currently, I think it's going to probably be that 4 or 5. I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's tough because there are so many teams in that range, and the way that the NBA has flattened the draft lottery odds over the last couple of years, every team, the first 3 worst teams in the NBA, they're all 14% chance at that first pick. But here's the thing. If you're the Spurs and you really want to guarantee yourself to not do any worse than, the 4th pick, if you have the worst record in the NBA, you can't do any worse than 4. So if I'm them, that's what I'm shooting for. Obviously, you're shooting for player development. You can get that along the way, but they were really, really bad. The second worst record, even with Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson. Those 2 guys are gone now. I think it's safe to say that the Spurs aren't going to improve with Kim Birch and Devonte Graham. So I'm not that worried, but I feel you 100%. If the Spurs name is not called and, it's 4-3, we're going to start partying here, right? Because even if you don't get Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson is there. There's a few other guys who you really like there, whether that's, Brandon Miller or either of the Thompson twins, but it's going to be an exciting time to be a Spurs fan, and it'll make all those losses worth the wait, right? So my heart's already beating kind of fast thinking about it, but we'll have to wait for it. It's a few more months in down the line.
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you. When I'm looking at it in the grand scheme of things, if you don't get that number 1 pick and you get number 2, Scoot Henderson, I'm not mad at that. I actually
No.
like Scoot a lot. At number 3 is when it gets interesting. The team can actually decide to go with size, and if they do, Brandon might be your guy. But if you also want to go and add some, pure athleticism, you're looking at the Thompson twins because the both of them are crazy good when it comes to their athletic prowess, and they're intriguing. They're raw, but they're intriguing, but again, it's a gamble, So the thing that really is upsetting in a way is you're looking at this year's draft, right? And you're looking through number 1 through 10. Aside from just maybe 1 or 2 bigs that really stand out at you in this draft, it's really guard heavy. You have shooting guards, you have point guards that are primarily going to be your best available options at their positions. If you get, 2, 3, 4, I mean, you know what you're going to get at 2, 3, 4, 5, going down the line is when it gets interesting. And I think much to the dismay of Spurs fans, as I stated it before, if they're at that 4 position and, they could go for size, or if they want to go for best available player, you got to brace yourself because, again, that might be a point guard or shooting guard, depending on who's on the board. And that's a conundrum that the Spurs are going to find themselves in. Again, Noah, if it's a point guard or a shooting guard, would you be upset?
No, not at all, because this team doesn't really have high-end talent. So, Keldon Johnson is fine. I think a lot of people see the 20 points per game and they go, star. He's not a star. He's not close to an all-star. He's not that dynamic of a player. He's awesome, but he's more of a complimentary player. Devin Vassell looked like he was kind of breaking out, but really small sample size. We don't really know what we have there. And of course, love Trey Jones. He's one of my favorite players on this roster. He's a great ball handler. He's a guy who makes the safe decisions. He's going to, get your offense running, make sure it doesn't fail. But there's no one dynamic at the point guard position. So if you end up landing someone like Keontae George, I just don't think you can really be upset. And in that same breath, if you end up landing a Cam Whitmore, or a Brandon Miller, and you say, well, you already have Keldon Johnson, those players both have the potential to be more dynamic than Keldon. And right now, it's all about adding talent. Like, you can't pass on a player because you already have someone at that position. You can if you're a good team, but the Spurs are the furthest thing away from being a good team. They're awful. They're terrible right now. So you got to go with the talent. And if that's where the talent is, then you can't be disappointed. Because really, who do they have besides Trey who can handle a ball?
Yeah.
Like full time? I don't think anyone. I don't think anyone can do that besides him right now.
Yeah, but Brandon Miller's been one of these names that's really gotten a lot of, attention over the last week or so. He's moving up a lot of people's big boards right now. Basically, he's a 6'9". They list him at 200 pounds. He's out of Alabama, and he's a freshman. He's averaged about 18.8 points, 8.2 rebounds a game, 2.0 assists. The field goal shooting percentage is 45.5. He's an intriguing big, that can shoot. So again, he's attractive, man. And I don't know, man, if the Spurs are at that 4 spot, I mean, I wouldn't be mad if they winded up picking Brandon Miller, So again, he's intriguing, but I don't know, man. There's just some questions I have about the kid, but on paper, he looks like an intriguing big,
Yeah, and I wouldn't really classify him as a big man. He's really more of like in the vein of like a Keldon Johnson or a Paul George, where they're like a small forward.
Yeah.
They're a wing. They can put the ball on the floor a little bit. He can shoot well. He's shown some really nice high-end defensive flashes. So like, there's a lot to like about him, but he'll never, be a front court player. He's not particularly strong. He doesn't really have a frame that lends itself to adding a lot of muscle or bulk to that frame. So he'll probably always be rather slender. But, if you like a player like a Brandon Ingram, kind of a skinny guy who's tall but can handle the ball and shoot a little bit, sure. I'm not saying that's who he is, but if you're looking for someone in a similar vein who score first, can shoot the ball a little bit, I think that's what you're looking at. But yeah, there's not really a lot of top end front court, power forward, center prospects at the top of this draft, and that's, if you're the Spurs, you kind of want that. But again, like, it's all about talent. You'll take it wherever you can get it.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out though to my buddy Evan Townsend, because he's the one that showed me Brandon Miller, and he'd been talking to me about Brandon Miller a while back, and he just released his big board, and we put that out up there, and I helped him make the graphics, so I'm quite proud of the big board. So go check out my buddy Evan Townsend over on Twitter. But yeah, man, I think Brandon Miller's an intriguing prospect, and the kid can shoot the 3. He's not horrible from 3, but he's not all that great either. He still needs some work. But right now, I believe he's shooting like a little under 36%, right? A tad under 37. He's probably at 36, I believe 36.9% currently right now from 3. His 3-point shooting percentage, which you could still work with. It's not horrible. It's not like he's 15 or 20, but it's something that you could work with. So again, kid is intriguing, but we're going to see what happens as we get closer and closer to that NBA draft that'll be coming up here shortly. We have to still first get through the NBA All-Star Game festivities, which we're going to talk about right now. And we do have 2 Spurs that are going to be representing the silver and black at this year's NBA All-Star festivities. We're going to have Jeremy Sohan, who's going to be representing in the NBA and the Jordan Rising Stars game. And then you have Charles Bassey, who's going to be representing the Spurs on Sunday. And that is going to be, I'm trying to get the schedule here. That's going to be in the G League Next Up game, which is going to be available on Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. The Rising Stars game, I believe that's going to be on Friday, and that's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, you can go ahead and see that on TNT. The G League game that you're going to see, the Next Up game, that can be seen on NBA TV at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So, hey, at least we got 2 San Antonio Spurs that are going to be representing an All-Star weekend, right, Noah?
It'll be nice to have somebody there because they haven't had someone there in the last couple of years. So just having players there is nice. You don't feel left out.
Yeah, and Charles Bassey, I mean, I think he got that last roster spot now that finally the dust has settled and the Spurs went ahead and released. The other news to that was the Spurs released Stanley Johnson, over the weekend here. I believe I saw it through Sham Shernaya. He went ahead and released it first, and I saw it there. And the Spurs had a roster spot open. They went ahead and signed your boy Gorgie Dang finally to a contract because they ran out of 10-day contracts. They had to give him a
Yeah.
full contract finally. So good on Gorgie. I mean, he's been a team player, Noah. He's done his time. You know, they let him go. They brought him back for another 10-day, another 10-day, another 10-day, and then I'll finally giving him a solid and say, all right, we'll sign you. We have one roster spot open. They're gonna go ahead and waive Stanley Johnson. They're gonna go ahead and give that other roster spot to one Charles Bassey. I mean, what did you think of that? Was it expected? Surprising?
No, I think it was expected. I mean, he's been a guy who played fairly well whenever Jakob Poeltl was out for about 7 or 8 games earlier in the season, and he wasn't perfect, but he showed some flashes of being able to protect the rim, be a, rim runner in transition, catch some lobs, clean the glass, like that kind of work that, maybe it's the dirty work not everybody wants to do, but he's fairly young. He went to, I believe it was St. Anthony High School in San Antonio for his first 2 years of high school. So he's familiar with the area. He's been part of their G League team. He's dominated there. As one of his last games in the G League was a 15 game where he had 40 points, 15 rebounds. So I think it made sense, right? I mean, it's easier to look internally than to find an external candidate. So that made a lot of sense. And then the Gorgie Dieng thing, I think for me, like, I don't care if they bring him back. I think he's good for the roster in terms of like, he brings that veteran leadership. Everybody seems to really love him. I just don't want to see him on the court, but they've been hurt. So I don't blame them for putting him out there. They don't have any other choice. So all in all, pretty predictable moves, but they're moves that I think make sense. They're not predictable moves that you walk away going, why did they do that? I knew they were going to do that. They're moves that you're like, yeah, it was going to happen, but that's a good decision. Both of those were good decisions. So happy for both of those guys.
Yeah, well, you do know that we do have some former Spurs that are up on the they can pick up in waivers. I believe it was
Oh
Boban,
yeah.
Bryn
He just
Forbes.
got signed by the by the Rockets again, but Bryn Forbes, that would be
No,
funny. It would be funny just for the sake of having him back, but yeah, there's
and
a
then they
couple
have
former Spurs out there.
the other former Spur that the San Antonio Spurs just waived, Dwayne Dedman. He's still, I believe, out there. They can pick him up on waivers. But Bryn Forbes, I've seen enough of Bryn. I don't want to see the Bryn Trey Jones backcourt anymore. I think I've seen enough of that, Noah. So it would be a definite no. Let's bring Patty back home instead. Let him finish his career out with the silver and black. Show him some love.
Yeah.
I'd rather see Patty than Bryn. That's just my two sentiments here. But let's go ahead and move forward here. Another thing I wanted to go ahead and mention is an article I saw here, and it was you explaining really what the Pelicans are getting in one Josh Richardson. And this was an article I saw here on Fansided. And they were actually talking to, they said, a Spurs analyst. So I was like, ooh, we get fancy with the names now, Noah. So you are a Spurs analyst, but it was a good article written by Matt Issa. So it was written a day ago. So make sure you go and check that out on Fansided. But you want to go ahead and tell the peeps, kind of what you were saying about what the Pelicans are getting in Richardson?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're a Spurs fan, you know what Josh Richardson brought to the court, right? He was, to me, really selfless. He came to the Spurs in that Derek White trade. He had, 3 or 4 games where he was just a DNP coach's decision, just sitting on the bench, and never once, was he frowning. Never once did he look frustrated. He was there, putting his arm around young guys when they came to the bench, talking to them, letting them know, hey, you made a mistake, but here's how you can get better. And then once he started getting on the court, he could have been upset that, oh my gosh, Trey Jones is playing ahead of me. You've got, Devin Vassell, who's getting touches ahead of me. At the time, he probably could have been upset, but he accepted the role as just another guy on the court who shoots the 3 ball, plays some defense, and occasionally, runs the pick and roll when he's with the bench unit. But he was just, to me, a guy who was maybe not that valuable for San Antonio for what they were trying to do in terms of, get a better draft pick. And they realized everything that he brought to, the roster, the locker room, and they moved him to a team that can offer him a chance to compete, which, for everything that he did, he deserves it. So really happy for Josh Richardson. It is a little tough to see him go because he was one of their few competent players every night, but it had to happen. It had to happen. That he could have walked for nothing this summer, and you don't want that to happen. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, it is a win-win for everyone, so another thing I wanted to talk about here too, now that we just mentioned your article, now the article that you're a part of here on Fansided, is the Spurs record. I mean, man, I'm going
Yikes.
ahead and getting this off of Paul Garcia, our good friend Paul Garcia. He says the Spurs they fall to 0-40 when trailing by double digits in a game this season. It does not bode well. I think you can copy and paste every time you see them falling behind in the first quarter. You can say, okay, copy. Spurs are going to fall behind the first quarter almost every single game. And then you're going to hit paste because the outcome is going to be they're going to try to get back into the game. They make a run in the third or the fourth quarter, a valiant run at that. And then all for naught because in those final minutes, it's usually at that 8-minute mark, 5-minute mark, the game gets out of control.
They fall apart. Yeah.
They fall apart. And that's it. That's all she wrote, you know. But I mean, that's a telling sign right there of the San Antonio Spurs and where they're currently at, you know. And just to show you where they're at in the grand scheme of things, there's a couple of teams here that, I mean, they all have I think was it 43 losses, I think, already on the season, and that's going to be the Hornets, the Spurs, the Rockets. I'm like, oh man. and they're just not very good. They're 14-43 overall, 5-22 on the road, 9-13 versus the East, 0-4 on the current rodeo road trip. And I got to be honest with you, Noah, after looking at, you know, the schedule for the rodeo road trip, I thought the best chance that the Spurs had at winning a game was going to be against the Pistons, but they dropped that one in double overtime. I don't really see them winning a game on this rodeo road trip, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't exactly know who's left on the rodeo road trip, so I can't tell you exactly who the opponent's going to be, but just based on the basketball that they've been playing recently and having lost Jakob and having lost Josh Richardson, Joe, it's hard to see them ending the 12-game losing streak they're on, and it's actually their second double-digit losing streak of the season. So
one of the longest in Spurs. It's going to be one of the longest in Spurs franchise history. I think the record is 13. You know, and they might beat.
And they could set a new one. Yeah, exactly. They could set a new one. So I'm not exactly rooting for them to get, you know, beat up every night. I definitely don't want the team morale to go down, but the losses are good in the long run. And as long as they're playing and they're getting development out of it and they're learning lessons and Pop's trying to hold the guys accountable, I think that's really all you can ask, right? Because at least you're not the Rockets where they say, hey, you're young, we're bad, our goal is to be bad, do whatever you want. You know, like that doesn't help anybody. And they've improved a little bit, but that's kind of been their mindset all season. It's hard to get young guys out of bad habits, and the Spurs are trying to instill these good practices in young guys. So lose or win, at least they're trying to do something good.
And here's the rest of the schedule for the rodeo road trip. The Spurs are going to play the Cavaliers, which will be at today on Monday, you know, at 6 o'clock p.m. I don't think that's going to bode well for the Spurs because the Cavaliers are coming off a 6-game win streak, and the Spurs are on what? They're 12. They're on a 12-game losing streak. I mean, you can do the math there. And then after the Cavaliers, they play the Hornets. Okay, another team that's, you know, bottom feeders like the San Antonio Spurs. But I think the Hornets are going to be better than the Spurs, especially on the road. It's going to be hard for them to come out of there with the win, in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. At least they get one.
I mean, they lost to the Hornets by almost 40 on opening night, and that was with like their entire roster before there were any, you know, results or expectations or, I mean, it wasn't even close. And now they have Gordon Hayward back and the rest of their roster, like LaMelo Ball has returned and he's in a good rhythm. So, I mean, they could beat them because they are a bad team, but the Spurs just are kind of a level below even them.
They're even worse than that. And then after the Hornets, you have the Mavericks, and then you have the Jazz back to back. And then they finally come home, and who do they get to play? The Pacers. And then after that, they play the Rockets back to back. So I'm like, it's going to be a battle for the worst team, for the worst record in the NBA, the worst team in the NBA.
Battle to the bottom.
Battle of the bottom. Exactly right. So it's going to be tough. I mean, I was kind of talking with my buddy Paul Garcia here, and I was telling him, I'll be honest with you, Paul, you know, kind of conversations that we have behind the scenes. I'm like, I really don't see this team winning, you know, more than 5 games the rest of the season. I'm honestly, I just don't see it. I mean, I think we had a lot of people had the Spurs winning between 20 and 23 games this season. And I think it's going to be hard pressed for them to actually get past winning at least 19 to 20 games, just the way that the team is structured currently, so not a bad thing. I mean, team's going to wanting to rebuild. I mean, losing helps, right, Noah?
Yeah, I mean, losing helps. You certainly don't want to see them win 5 games for the rest of the season because that would be tough. I think that, they
Yeah.
may sneak a few out of there. I mean, as bad as the Rockets have been this and as bad as the Spurs have been, every time the Spurs have played the Rockets, there's just like a difference in competency on the court, and it's shown, and the Spurs have won, right? And I think the same thing for the Jazz coming up here. I mean, they kind of cleared house to a degree, and they've really hit the reset button. I think they realized, like, okay, we had a good run, but really we don't have anyone outside of Lauri Markkanen. And you can't win with just Lauri Markkanen. So I expect the teams that are bad, like the Spurs are, in that, Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, I expect them to kind of compete hard for that. And by competing hard, I mean trying to lose. So they may
Yeah.
try to lose with the Spurs, and Pop is never trying to lose. So de facto, they may win just because they are trying to win and the other team is trying to lose. So we'll see. I hope that's not the case where they only win a couple more games, but it's kind of hard to disagree with you. I mean, if they get to 22, 23 wins, I think that'd be they'd be hard pressed to reach that. That's a tough goal.
Yeah. That would be a moral victory if that in fact did happen. But I'm on the other side of that. I'm like, if I see growth from the young core and they continue to lose, and let's say they don't win 20 games, they win 19 games, I think it still helps morale because they show that they are capable of even better things next season. They have things they got to work on. But as long as you can see some of that growth occurring, which we are from this younger core, that's a good thing. It shows that the team is on that right path to resetting these wrongs that have happened this season, and hopefully they'll win a few more games next season, even if they are to get a top pick in the NBA draft. Let's be perfectly honest, with the current roster that they have, adding a number 1 pick that could have potentially be a franchise changing player will most likely translate into them winning just a few more games. It's not going to be a miraculous turnaround like what happened with the Spurs when they drafted one David Robinson. I'm not expecting that to happen, but I am expecting that if they get a top pick, they'll win a few more games than they won in the previous season. So one of the things I'd like to talk about real quick here too is some news that I heard from Bally Sports. Bally Sports is expected to file bankruptcy this week, should I say. And with the regional sports network, the way they have contracts with not only the NBA, the MLB, and NHL. So right now, this is all up in the air because currently, from what I was reading on an article that I saw online, Bally currently has about $585 million cash in hand, but they owe $2 billion in fees to teams this year. The math doesn't add up. And then currently for this particular month in February, they need to pay out $140 million in an interest payment that is due in mid-February. But if they go ahead and file the bankruptcy, it's going to start a 30-day grace period for the company to kind of restructure these deals with not only the MLB, the NHL, but also the NBA. So now that we know that Bally Sports is kind of the carrier for Spurs games, how is that going to affect those who actually ingest their sports or watch sports by just, let's say, getting that Bally Sports Plus, the streaming service? Because, there's a lot of cord cutters right now, and getting that Bally Sports Plus does help some of the people watch Spurs games. So if you don't have NBA League Pass, Bally Sports Plus is the way you're going to go. And if you can't watch Spurs games no longer on Bally Sports Plus, because let's say if they can't pay and they can't show these games, maybe the NBA rescinds the offer and they're like, you know what, we're just going to show these games from now on League Pass. You want to tell us a story about the League Pass. So let us know what you're thinking about this whole ordeal.
Well, first, I do have League Pass and it's been fine this season, but I think like when you do not live, or when you do live in San Antonio, rather, all the games on League Pass, and I believe it's in like a 50-mile radius of the city where your team plays, they black out the games. You cannot watch the games. So I don't know how that impacts that, but potentially if you're a Spurs fan and you're buying that package that says, hey, this is the team I want to watch, and you go to play a game and all of a sudden, oh, it's blacked out. You can't play it. Well, that sucks, right? I mean, I had a similar experience where I bought a single game to watch the Spurs play a preseason game. And when I went to play it, it said, this broadcast is not available. And I told them, okay, well, I paid for it. Why did you let me pay for it if it was blacked out? And we went back and forth with like 3 different people on their, their customer service. And then by the time it was done, they were like, oh, I think I get what was going on here. Okay, yeah, we'll have a refund to you in 2 weeks, which, $4.99 isn't the end of the world. But imagine having hundreds, thousands of, fans who are experiencing something similar where they're buying something and then they didn't realize it was blacked out, or, they're buying something and then all of a sudden they weren't, they didn't realize it was blacked out. Maybe they weren't informed. So I don't know. It could be messy, but at the end of the day, like, it's already kind of iffy with the Bally Sports Plus thing, from what I've heard for fans, that it's not even that great of a service to begin with.
It's a little wonky. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. The best experience that I've had with Bally Sports Plus has been on my desktop computer. If you're watching it on a desktop computer, it's probably the best viewing experience you're going to have. But once you start getting on the app, let's say on a smart device, let's say you get your smartphone, it's a little weird there. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It'll cut out. You have a plethora of issues. The same thing occurs on occasion when you're watching Bally Sports Plus as an app through your smart TV. Sometimes you're watching, no problems. Other times it just doesn't work right, or there's a delay, or something happens where it just kicks you out and you got to go back in and you're like, I was watching the game. And I mean, for somebody who's paying $20-something a month to watch, the San Antonio Spurs or some of the other regional sports offerings that they have from the other teams that are in your selected area, that's not really what you want. You want a good, smooth transition the whole time. And it needs some work. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think they should have just released it in its current iteration. I think they should have, fixed some of the bugs, the gremlins that it had, because it's okay, but of course you have to be on a desktop to get the best viewing experience. And let's be honest, are you going to be at a desktop computer watching the game? Probably not. You're going to be in the comfort of a recliner or a sofa wanting to watch it in your living room like everybody else, But man, I think Bally right now is in a bad space, because I mean, another thing that I got from the article is that Bally, again, $8.6 billion in debt. And by them filing bankruptcy, Sinclair is hoping to, strike a deal to keep the channels in operation and keep the venue going, where they can still, continue to, stream games to the customers that have already paid. And if you're on a month to month, it's not so bad. But if you paid for, let's say, a whole season in advance, and then all of a sudden that's taken away from you, what's going to happen? You've already paid in advance. Are you going to be able to recoup that money? Probably not. So those fans might be left holding the bag. So overall, it's not a good look on Bally Sports. I mean, they were acquired after they acquired this, or was it the Diamond Sports Network, I believe, had to go ahead and release Bally Sports, or Fox Sports at that time, because Disney acquired that when they went ahead and purchased Fox in general. So they had to release that in order to get the deal done. So then it was acquired by Bally. But man, it's a shame though to see how much money is needed just to be able to legally show these games and then charge for the streaming service. I mean, that's something that I don't know. I'm going to have to take a good look at this and plan what I'm going to do next year. How am I going to watch these games? And the sad part is that Bally just never wanted to come to terms with, let's say, Hulu, YouTube TV, and some of the other streaming offerings. They could never come to a deal that was, hey, the numbers work for everybody all around the board. Because from what I was hearing from the other streaming services is that Bally was charging such an exuberant price, they weren't willing to pass that off to their customers, because who's going to want to pay another $20 on top of what you're paying already for some of these streaming services, So definitely something to keep an eye on if you're a Spurs fan or a sports fan in general. Keep an eye on what's going on with Bally Sports and their streaming services. Another thing that we're going to talk about here as we bring this show to a close is the Super Bowl occurred, Noah. I'm sure you watched some of that. What did you think about some of the commercials? To me, honestly, I didn't have any commercial that really stood out at me that was like, hey, this was a really good commercial. It was so funny. I just felt it was a little ho hum. I mean, did you have anything that stood out at you?
Not really. It's kind of sad.
No?
I kind of feel like the last couple of years commercials have, or at least the Super Bowl commercials have kind of gone downhill a little bit. Maybe they're running out of ideas. Like even like the one commercial that kind of stuck with me, the Blue Moon commercial, where it was like, can't remember the two beers even at the beginning where they were like fighting. And then at the end, it was like, that wasn't a commercial for them. It's actually a commercial for Blue Moon. Like it was weird, but not
Yeah.
creative. And it wasn't really that entertaining. And it didn't leave me going like, oh yeah, I really like Blue Moon. And I do like Blue Moon, but it didn't make me want to have Blue Moon any more than it did
Normally
before I
does.
saw the commercial. So yeah, just it wasn't great. I also saw the guys from Scrubs were with John Travolta for like that
Yeah.
Grease commercial or whatever. I don't even remember what brand it was. Was it Progressive or so? I don't
Oh, it
know.
was
I don't
T-Mobile. They were
T-Mobile. See, like
plugging their 5G
yeah.
at home internet.
See, the fact that I can't even remember what brand that was, that's just not good. It's not a good look. So yeah, there was quite a few commercials that
What
I
about the
saw
Breaking
and
Bad
they went.
commercial?
The Breaking Bad one was good. I
The
did
popper.
like that with Jesse Pinkman
Yeah.
and Walter White making the chips in their little RV thing. That was cool. I did like that commercial. So I'll give props to that one. But most of the other ones were just kind of like that. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, the Tubi one was nightmare fuel. They had like some big old rabbit and it was coming at you, just looking behind a tree, and then they showed the rabbit come out. I was like, if I was a kid and I was watching this, I'd probably be crying, dude.
I
It
do.
was just weird. Some of the commercials are just plain out weird, you know?
I agree with you. And I think though I must have missed that on my way to the Super Bowl. There was a huge accident out where I live going across a bridge where like the only way to get there is going across the bridge because it's across a body of water. And
Ah,
I got stuck in traffic for an hour. We left super early to get to the Super Bowl party we were going to early, and then we didn't show up until the middle of the first quarter. So I probably missed that commercial, but it doesn't sound like I missed that much in terms
yeah.
of the Super Bowl ads. So kind of disappointing, but maybe they'll do better next year.
Yeah, if you showed up an hour late to a Super Bowl party, should I say, and you didn't bring any beverages, oh man, that's party foul. But if you brought something to drink, you have been forgiven
We
right
had
away.
food and drinks. We had
There
food
you
and drinks.
go.
So
You were
we were
forgiven.
all ready. We were prepared.
What did you think about the halftime show? I got to ask you about Rihanna, you know?
I thought it was really good. I like Rihanna a lot. I like her music. All the transitions were really smooth. I think she also had like a sort of pregnancy announcement where she had like
Yeah.
rubbed her belly and then confirmed it afterwards. So the fact that she got up there was on those like high wires on those platforms, I thought it was really good. And another thing that I thought maybe like kind of flew under the radar, really smart marketing from them. It was the dancers. All the dances they were doing were pretty simple and repeatable. And in the age of social media where TikTok is king and everybody wants to see the dances that they saw on TV and they want to replicate them, that's an easy way to remember a performance because now I think everybody's going to go on TikTok. They're going to want to do those dances. They're going to want to talk about the little marshmallow men on the field. So
Yeah.
good on them. Like I thought it was good from start to finish, and I'll have to hand it to her. A lot of the Super Bowl performances, whether it was Coldplay, whether it was the Black Eyed Peas, it was just bad. Like even Justin Timberlake a few years ago, not
Yeah.
great. And their singing was a little off. They were missing notes. You couldn't really hear them. Rihanna did have her tracks playing over while she was singing, but when she was singing, it was good. It was
Yeah.
genuinely good. So all in all, I thought it was one of the better Super Bowl performances from, I guess, that perspective. But it could have been better. It always could be better. But I thought it was really good. I liked
You
it.
didn't get the Smash Brother vibes off of the floating platforms, man?
You know what? I didn't even think about it that way, but I do like that. I like that. That's creative.
I was like, I was ready to pick up my controller, man. I'll take control of Rihanna. Who are we gonna be fighting, you know?
That's good.
Yeah, so I was like, I got Smash Brother vibes when I saw the platforms and how they kind of panned out. They showed them all there. I'm like, looks like a level right out of Smash Brothers, man. If you're a fan of that. But either way, I thought she did a great job, especially her being pregnant. I was scared for her too, being that high up in
That
the air,
high, yeah.
And that platform looked a little shaky, like you didn't want
It
to
was
move too
moving.
much.
Yeah, it was moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think she did good. She held it down, man. And who knew, like once you start listening to her songs and her, the whole performance and everything, it's like, man, Rihanna had a whole bunch of bangers, dude. Like you forget how good she was.
She's got an insanely big catalog of like
Yeah.
hits, like number one hits. Yeah, her music has been good for a long time. She hasn't put out new music in like 5 years, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's impressive that she could just come out there, do like 10 songs, and then there's probably another 12 that were like, where were those?
Yeah.
She's incredible. I really love Rihanna. She's a great performer, great artist. I think she did a wonderful job.
Yeah. So one of the few things that I took away too from, the Super Bowl commercials were the teasers for the trailers. Like I saw the trailer for Fast X, Fast and the Furious 10. I'm like, end the series already, man. Come on. What are they going to wind up doing with these guys? Putting them out there in wheelchairs already? I mean, the trailer made the movie look a little interesting. Will I watch it? Probably. I'll probably go and watch it, but I'm like everybody else. I'm kind of getting tired of it. The Ant-Man trailer, they showed some more stuff in the Ant-Man trailer. I was like, okay, this was kind of interesting. And the other one was the Flash. To me, the Flash was the big one. I liked the trailer for the Flash. Thought it was interesting. From what I just told you from these three, movie trailers that they tease, and you could watch the full trailers on YouTube. Which one did you really get excited for?
Probably Ant-Man, because I really like Paul Rudd and I enjoyed the other Ant-Man movies. And to be honest, I'm not like a very big Ezra Miller fan. He's a weird dude off of the screen, and
Yeah,
they've had all sorts of controversy with him, like choking women and hitting women and like slapping fans, and just a weird dude. So I'm not really that interested. Plus, and I hate to say it for the people who love the DC movies, but like their franchise kind of sucks. Like there have been some good movies here and there. Like Batman was really good. The standalone Joker movie was solid. I liked the first Wonder Woman, but like outside of that, like all the movies kind of sucked, especially. And I know this is going to make people mad, but the extended Zack Snyder cut of
4-hour
Justice
plus
League,
movie?
that was 4 hours of my life I will never get back. I regret watching that. That was awful. Like they didn't need to be longer than the original. No, I was on my phone for most of it because it was like the first one was already long. Making it longer didn't help. Like that didn't, and the CGI was still bad. Like Cyborg looked weird. I just, it doesn't stack up to Marvel. And then the last one was the other movie, the not fantastic, the driving movie, the Fast and Furious X, whatever.
Yeah.
They just, it's not doing it for me. Hasn't done it for me since Tokyo Drift, man. Like they needed to stop. Man. They're at X now, 10 Extended Family. Is that what it's called? Like with I don't know what Vin Diesel. He loves family. It's all about familia. Yeah, I can't watch any more of those movies. I can't even see the trailers for those movies. I'm over it. I can't do it anymore.
Interesting. It looked interesting. I think this last one is in 2 parts, so it's not only going to be at 10. I think you have 11 too. So I mean, it's just an extra, cash grab there by the studio. I mean, they got to make their money somehow, some way. But I think it's going to be Vin Diesel's swan song, man. You got to let the dude
Thank
retire.
God.
Let him retire. Doesn't have very much range as an actor,
No, and you know what? More so than letting him retire, let people retire him. Like the people deserve better than that. Come on, they don't want to see him anymore. Please let him be Groot. Say 2 words, get his paycheck, and leave.
I forgot about that too. You had the Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
That's the best he's ever done. That's the best that and the Pacifier. When I was a kid, those are the only movies you can get me to watch with him. Other than that, I'm not interested in Vin Diesel. Please get him off my screen, please.
Man, I had forgotten about that. The Pacifier. You had to bring that one up. Oh God,
it was a solid movie from my childhood. I'll never forget it. It was a great movie. At least when I was a kid. I haven't seen it since I was like 6 or 7, so it's been about 20 years. But I'll take that any day. I'll take that any day.
In that movie, man. That irony in that movie is because every time I go to my doctor's office, they always have that film on. I'm like, put the movie in there, please. Like, change the disc, man. It's like, come on. I'm tired of watching the Pacifier. Every time I go for a checkup or something, I was like, again, the Pacifier, we're still got this thing on. And then I was laughing because one of my buddies sent me a text, and it's like, oh, he goes, did you see that Disney just confirmed that they're going to make another Toy Story 5? And they showed a picture of Ben Affleck, the one where he's smoking the cigarette and he has his eyes up in the air. And they put the Woody hat on and they go, yeah, I'm tired, partner.
That's good.
That had me laughing. That was pretty funny. All right, man. So we're going to go ahead and bring this show to a close here. And you can go ahead and make sure to follow Noah Magaro-George on Twitter. On the Twitters, he's at N_Magaro. And, he's doing his thing now with Air Alamo. So go ahead and follow him and check out Air Alamo. And shout out to our buddy over there, Josh Paredes, and Ty Yeager. Ty is also joined up with Air Alamo, I saw. So good luck to you guys, man. And anything else you want to go ahead and say that you might have coming up or working on?
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, I switched over to Air Alamo. I'm running things over there right now. But our podcast from SB Nation, Alamo City Limits, they were gracious enough to give us the name. So we're taking the name, we're changing networks. We're in the process of getting the subscriber feed. So as soon as that's back, we'll be back. But if you haven't seen a podcast in a while, that's why. You know, we're in the transition process. But really excited to get that started up again. Really excited to keep writing. And we've got some good writers at our site right now that are kind of integrating with me. So really excited to get things going there because there's a good group of people there, and we're excited to just try to make something special there. So appreciate you having me, Joe, and hopefully we can do this again real soon.
Yeah, we have to have a roundtable discussion. I want to get you and Ty and Josh kind of get the gang back together and have a roundtable discussion. I'm sure that'll go over pretty good. You know,
For sure. Yeah. Now I'm down whenever.
Yeah. So you can go ahead and also follow me at Two Shots Podcast. And like always, you know, you can go ahead and make sure you like, share, subscribe to the content that not only Noah's creating out there, not only with Air Alamo, but also go ahead and give love to his YouTube channel, because I know he's going to have great things coming out through his YouTube channel once he gets back on board with Alamo City Limits here. So make sure you check out Noah's YouTube. I'm all on YouTube as well under Two Shots Podcast. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share to both our shows. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.